Hello, everyone. This is MMA Interesting Prospects podcast. Today, our guest is Victor Kuiks, who will be fighting on LFA 184 against Jean-Paul Lebosnoyani. Hello, Victor. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you for having me.
Thanks for taking the invitation. We are just a few days away from, I believe, that the biggest fight of your career. It's a quite dangerous opponent. So if you can tell me, what do you feel a few days? How do you feel a few days before this bout?
I feel good. The weight cut's been going very smoothly. I've had a lot of help um, from my girlfriend who's been cooking up every meal to the exact gram. So I've been very lucky with that. But yeah, it's a big cut. I'm not there yet, but I feel strong. I've been knocking out my training partners during this camp. Not that I take any pride in that too much, but it's usually a good sign going into a fight.
And did you feel any hesitation about taking a bout in the welterweight division?
I mean, my coach, I don't really like to cut as much weight. I prefer fighting a middleweight, but for some reason, my head coach, think I do better at welterweight. So I trust his word. You know, he's been around. He has a lot of experience. He's brought a lot of guys to the UFC. So what am I? What am I gonna do? You know, so I just take his word for it. I trust him, and you know, at the end of the day, we're just soldiers, and we do what the general tells us, right?
And do you feel that that Lebosnoyani will be a biggest fight, biggest challenge of your career so far?
I think every fight is the biggest challenge so far. You know, you could. It's not like you're going into a fight, you win, and then the next fight is a smaller fight. I think unless you fought for a title and then next fight is not for the title. You see what I'm trying to say? I think every fight when you're climbing up the hill is the biggest fight you've had so far. So that's just how I treat it.
And before this fight, did you were you focused on any submission defense? Because we know that he's a very good grappler.
Yeah, a good thing is that Entram has very good grapplers. They have a lot of black belts walking around. A lot of guys that compete at the highest level at ACDC or AC. You know what I mean? What's it called? The competition. I'm not a jiu-jitsu guy, so don't pin me down on it. But so I've been training a lot with the jiu-jitsu guys, and of course, he's a very good jiu-jitsu guy. But then, like they always say, this is not jiu-jitsu. This is MMA.
And he had some problems against good strikers. So because of your experience in striking department, I think that you will create also a big problem for him.
Well, that's of course is what the thought line of thought was going into this fight. My coach told me to accept this fight, even though he's a homegrown hero, has uh, has had a fair share of wars, and of course he's got the pedigree on the ground that I need to be aware of. But my coach told me, like, I think you have the striking advantage if you know how to keep this fight standing. I see you knocking this guy out, so here we go.
Definitely, it will be an interesting one to see. And is it a one fight deal, the contract that you have right now with LFA, or the longer one?
Well, you have to understand, they just sent me a one contract fight. I mean, um, Jean Paul is their, like I said, is their homegrown hero. They need, I think I'm being contracted as the underdog. They want him to beat someone up. And you know, but I like being the underdog. I like being underestimated. I like proving people wrong. I think everyone does to a certain extent. So I think the pressure is more on his side than it is on mine. But he seems like a very like collected guy. He doesn't strike me as an emotional um loudmouth. You know, I think he comes in with the same um plan that he always does, and he just looks at me as an opponent. He doesn't look at me with any emotion. I don't think he comes in with any pressure. I think he's a true fighter. and I think he will come in to get the job done, just like I am.
And like you said, everybody and of course the sport loves the underdog story, and because you are an underdog in this fight, it can be like big thing for you when you will win this fight. You can get like another fight or maybe even the title, a title shot.
Yeah, that would be nice. Beating Jean-Paul would put me in title contention of in the LFA, and also it would bump up my paycheck hopefully because LFA, love you guys. Thank you for having me, but you guys got to pay, man. Come on, rent is due, guys. You think this house pays itself? Yeah, I could use a little bump financially.
And your previous fights were in the Ultimate Warrior Challenge, the big promotion in Mexico. And did
Yeah.
you have also a like contract with them right now?
No, not. I've had the privilege to befriend the CEO of UWC. Of course, the first time that I came fighting for the promotion, they were just it was just as weird for them as it was for me. What's this white guy from Europe doing all the way here in Mexico, fighting Mexicans in their backyard? So, but then when I started finishing guys off in the cage, they were like, okay, we got maybe uh a potential character here. So, and then I just signed a contract for per fight. Mexicans are very they're not like the Americans, like they need everything in writing, everything black and white. The Mexicans are more an honorable race when it comes to business. So we agree, we shake hands on it, and the contract will come later, but you can't change anything of what we just agreed upon. And I respect that. I respect it about the Mexicans. They're very honest people, and I like that.
And of course, you built your name in this promotion because you had 5 wins there and also beautiful finishes. So I think that you are you are right now like known name in this country in the world of MMA there.
Well, it's funny that Mexico is a big country. It's an insanely big country that but yeah, it's funny to walk in the streets of Tijuana and people recognizing you. That's odd. It's not that hard to be recognized in Tijuana as a being looking the way I do, but it's fun. It's fun. It's people, sometimes they scream your name and they go, "Hey, Viking," and then it's like, "Hey, yo, what's up, dude?" I don't know who that was, but it's fun. It's a humbling experience, and yeah, I've kind of made a name for myself here, so now it's time for the next step, and it's time to do the same thing, but in the United States.
And about Mexico, I think that it can be quite interesting story because you are a Dutch fighter. I believe that you have your first amateur bouts in the Netherlands. But
Yes.
right now you are in Mexico. So if you can tell me how you get to this country from Europe.
Well, Poland kept their cool during the pandemic, but the west of Europe went absolutely bananas, and yeah, I'm not gonna dwell on it too much, but pretty much Western Europe turned into an open air prison, and I couldn't get a fight for 2 years. I wanted to make my pro debut in 2019, 2020. So that's when everything got locked down for about 2 years. So, uh, and then at one point, I decided to go to Mexico because in Mexico, there was no pandemic. Of course, there was a pandemic and the media played along, but there weren't too many restrictions and too many rules. You didn't need a vaccination, proof of vaccination to go to a freaking restaurant or a gym. So I moved to Mexico, met a lot of Europeans that settled here in Mexico, and I found my way to Tijuana eventually. And then I started training here, fighting here. I made some good friends, and hey, I even got a dog and a girlfriend now. She's sitting right over there, and I got a life here now, man, and I'm feeling better than ever.
And Mexico was the like first choice in your mind, or did you hesitate
Well,
about any other country?
I was literally looking up countries that didn't have any pandemic restrictions, that weren't going along with the insanity of it. So it was either Romania or Mexico. And my Romanian sucks, so I spoke a bit of Spanish. I spoke very good Spanish. I thought that I would nail it, but then once I got to Mexico, I realized my Spanish, much like my MMA skills, need a lot of working on. But yeah, Mexico sounded more appealing. Plus, I had friends from England and the Netherlands that also fled to Mexico. And then when I came to Mexico, it came to my attention pretty instantly that I wasn't the first European that thought of moving away from Europe during the pandemic, because the place was just stacked with Europeans, or as they call, or expats, which is basically, expats is a fancy word for immigrants from first world countries. So when I came there, I met tons of English, German, Dutch, Scandinavians, even people from Israel, Australia, Americans that all moved to Mexico because they were like, yeah, my business went belly up. I couldn't train. I couldn't work. I couldn't go outside. So I didn't feel alone. I didn't feel when I came to Mexico in December of 2021. I felt like, okay, well, this is actually, maybe this has been the right move. The only problem is that most of the people that moved to Mexico, they were doing remote work. They were working on their laptops as digital nomads, as they call it. So they go, I don't know, they were surfing in the morning, working on their computers in the afternoon, and then partying at night. And that's all fun and games, but I cannot work on a computer because not the kind of guy. So I went to Tijuana because Tijuana is where Entram Gym was, and that's where at the time uh, the UFC flyweight champion at the time, Brandon Moreno, resided. That was his home, so that was for me the best gym to go to, and been living in TJ now in Tijuana for, I'd say, the better part of bit over 2 years now, almost 2.5 years.
And when you came to Mexico, how much of the background in combat sports in MMA did you have like from Europe?
Well, of course, I would say that my base is Dutch style kickboxing. I think if you're anyone who's a martial arts fan, know that the Dutch have pretty gnarly kickboxing. So I felt confident in my striking. I just realized that when I went to Mexico, that these guys, at least at Entram, they have very good jiu-jitsu. And I would say that wrestling, of course, is not so much a Mexican thing, unless it's the lucha libre with the masks and the whole and all the shenanigans and bells and whistles. But I would say that jiu-jitsu wise, I improved a lot. I There was a big gap to fill when I moved to Mexico, and wrestling wise, and I think in the last, my only loss, I got out wrestled by a black belt judo for 3 rounds. It was a very boring fight, but no excuses. I got out grappled by a strong judo guy. So after that, I started focusing a lot on my wrestling, and I think arts, all my martial arts have improved a lot. Have come a long way, but I think especially in the grappling department, I've made big steps.
And for this training camp, who was your like main sparring partner, that the main guy that you train, that you can like gain knowledge from?
Well, I try to spar with some southpaws that have good jiu-jitsu, because Lebosnoyani switched it up, but I've seen that he tends to fight in southpaw. So I've had a few training partners that I had literally I trained with a Brazilian guy who's a southpaw, and a black belt in jiu-jitsu. And his name is Senegal. I've trained with Leonardo Blasco, who also is a no name. He's also southpaw, very good jiu-jitsu. And I've trained a lot with Michael Morales. Michael Morales is a UFC guy. That guy is a hard guy to handle. So I feel confident that if I can sit out the storm from those guys, that I can take on Jean-Paul Lebosnoyani May the 17th.
Yes, and Michael Morales, it's I believe he's like 16-0 with few UFC wins, so he's like super top guy.
Yeah, he was he's a freaking animal. He was so angry at me when I lost my fight. He wouldn't talk to me for a week. So, because I don't know, he said you're better than this guy. You let him out grapple you, blah blah blah. And well, but he's a freak. I would say he's a very exceptional guy. Um, I'm happy that we're friends outside of the gym as well. We hang out just like buddies, but inside the gym we're enemies, and when we wage war on each other. But that's how it should be, We're friends outside the gym and also inside the gym until the bell rings, and then we go at it.
And when you are outside of training camp, do you like train in every day, or you prefer to just stay a little bit longer outside of the gym just to rest, just to like heal your injuries, let's say?
Before a flight, you mean?
No, outside of training camp.
Oh, it depends. Outside of training camp, I train at least once a day, sometimes usually two, because if I don't, the coaches are very much on it. And if you don't, the coaches are very sensei, traditional, like at the gym. If you don't show up at training, they're not going to get you a fight because the gym also manages us. It's a very almost Thailand kind of gym when it comes to that. People live in most people live in a house that's owned by the gym. They get managed by the gym. So if you don't train, you're not fighting. If you're training only once a day, 5, 6 days a week, they're like, yeah, that's all fun and games, but you need to once you start showing up, that's when they say, hey, we're gonna go get you a fight. So what you give is what you get.
I think that it in some way it can be helpful, this kind of like mindset.
Well, it's a very I haven't seen that in most gyms, and it's not in every gym. Of course, I don't train um as hard outside of training camp as I do in training camp, and not as specifically. Of course, when in training camp, I train 3 times a day for 3 days a week, and then twice a day for another 2 days a week, and then once on Saturday. So it's a lot of sessions in one week. Uh, at first, when I came to Tijuana, my body couldn't handle that. That was just overtraining. But that's what they want. They look at it like the Dagestanis, and the Dagestanis are the modern day Spartans. That's how they look at it. They want the Spartan gym. The more you put in, the better. They want hardened guys, and then when you go, they want you to peak, and then 2 weeks before the fight, you build, you break down, and you rest, and then fight week, you just you move, you do patch, you just do whatever to make the weight. That's about it.
And about LFA, because LFA is probably the biggest regional promotion. Do you see LFA as the route to get to the UFC, like have a few fights there, like get a title and go to the UFC?
Well, I think it's safe to say that on U.S. soil, LFA is most likely the biggest feeder to the UFC. If you do, I mean, there's a ton of examples, but I think the best example, people ask me, what is LFA? I always tell them that's where Alex Pereira had his last fight before he went to the UFC. And then they go, oh, yeah, I know that guy. Of course, he had a kickboxing pedigree that was very extensive and impressive. But yeah, I think if you do well in the LFA, UFC is definitely up for grabs.
And about kickboxing, because you are from the Netherlands, did you think about being like only a kickboxer like many years ago?
Well, I started training martial arts in 2016, quite late actually. So I was already 22, and the martial art that was available at the time in the Netherlands was kickboxing. Everybody was kickboxing. That was the martial art everybody was doing. It still is the biggest martial art, but MMA is making a big backstroke. You know, MMA is now, since I left the Netherlands, MMA has grown exponentially in the Netherlands, which I'm happy about because the Dutch MMA scene is kind of growing. Because I had to explain a lot of people what MMA was at first, but now not so much anymore, I believe. But yeah, I was doing the whole kickboxing thing, and I noticed that kickboxing had a certain limit of what you could reach. And me, I wasn't there. Believe me, I was just fighting as an amateur. That was it. I was just getting money for ticket sales and stuff. But when I realized what the limit in MMA was, that was quite the difference between kickboxing and MMA. So I thought MMA was more of a challenge, and started studying MMA, and I thought it was awesome. I thought it was a dope concept. You step into the cage, they lock that door, and it's you and another guy in that cage. I thought it was brutal. That was some gladiator stuff, and I was like, man, sign me up. I want to do that.
Probably also the like small gloves. It's something that it's always like better to see than the big gloves in boxing or kickboxing.
Yeah, it does change things a lot. I mean, um you can't use certain techniques. Also, fighting in a ring, I've had MMA fights in a ring, is way different than fighting in a cage. There's no rope and dope techniques. You can't use the ropes to your advantage. With the big gloves, you can cover, you can shell. You can't do that with the small gloves. Well, we've seen Sean Strickland doing it for some reason. I don't know how he does it, but it's very uncommon. That's the point I'm trying to make. So it changes everything. And the Dutch style of kickboxing, the Dutch style of striking, is very much in common with Mexican boxing. It's high guard and forward. You chop to the head and then you chop to the legs. You go upstairs, downstairs, upstairs, downstairs. And the Mexicans, they do that with just with the boxing. Tight guard, head, body. And that's all good in kickboxing, but as soon as the wrestling comes in, you can't just come forward. As soon as you start walking forward, you're gonna get taken down, or you're gonna get elbowed in the face. Who knows? So it the whole MMA striking. People like to say I got this Dutch style kickboxing just because I am a Dutchman, but I think my striking is very much a hybrid that has been adjusted and adapted for MMA.
And for now, we can see that it definitely works for you because of your result.
Yeah, well, thank you. That's I think it's been going all right. I think there's always when I watch my fights back, I'm always very critical. I think most fighters that look their fights back, look back that study their own fights, they look at it more with a feeling of how do you say that, with a critical eye than with a complimentary eye. When I start look back at my fights, I'm like, oh my god, I can't believe I used to fight like that, you know, like it's ages ago. But every fight, I look back and go like, man, I'm not doing that again. I'm better now. So you learn every fight, you improve every fight, and yeah, I expect going into this fight and showing the best version of myself.
Uh, how, in your opinion, big is your potential, like in being a MMA fighter?
Come again? What do you mean?
Like, do you think that you will have a chance to be in the UFC rankings, fighting for the UFC belt? How big your potential is when you train, when you see like your sparring partners, your like opponents in the cage?
Yeah, well, um, it's not easy, but I take it one fight at a time. Of course, I'm an ambitious guy because if I wasn't ambitious, I wouldn't have switched to MMA. You know, like I said, I looked at MMA and I saw the heights that you can reach, and I was like, okay, I want to get there. So I got into MMA because I want to get as far as I can. Of course, fighting in the UFC, of course, fighting for a title is something that's always on my mind. But I am also very realistic, and I take it one fight at a time. I'm just I'm just that wolf climbing up the hill, taking on one other wolf at the time, or whatever animal is in front of me. And I'm not trying to skip any lines. I'm trying to do it, just like everyone, by hard work and going to war.
But probably also about like the promotions that you are fighting for, the UWC and right now LFA. It's also the like step ups for you. So it's going in the correct direction.
Yeah, I think you said that very well. I think fighting an LFA is a step into the right direction. It's definitely a step up. The fight's always going to be is also going to be a step up when it comes to risk. But like I said, I like a risk, man. If I wasn't a risk taker, I would have stayed my ass in the Netherlands and not moved to Mexico. So I'm not really, uh, I'm not really impressed by anyone they throw at me. Of course, not in a disrespectful way, but I'll take on anyone.
Who is your favorite fighter to watch in UFC or overall MMA?
My favorite fighter that I've always grown up, that I've always admired, grown as an MMA fighter myself, has been John Jones. His style, how he's to me he's the best MMA fighter uh, to ever walk the face of the earth, and not even close. But that's me. Um, yeah, John Jones is someone I always appreciate because he was so creative. His creativity was something that I always admired. He did those things, spinning elbows, the teeps, the kicks to the knees. He did all those unorthodox, uh, but also creative, weird, and wild things, and he still seemed very composed. So John Jones was always my favorite fighter. And the fact that he's an absolute freaking sociopath is also, you know, is also kind of funny. He just, you know, fucking rams his car into a pregnant lady and then runs off, comes back to get his drugs, and then runs off again. And then he doesn't do any time in prison. And then he just sits down in front of a camera and talks about Jesus. I mean, the guy's an absolute psychopath. It's hilarious. I'm not a, I don't think a much, he's not an example outside the cage, but definitely inside the cage for me. Like how the way he does it inside the cage is something I very much admire.
He of course had like many issues outside of the cage, but in the end, like in the cage, he was unbeatable, and he defeated so many champions. So in the cage, it's like hard to deny you probably even a like GOAT status.
Yeah, yeah, true. Another fighter that I like that nobody really gives too much credit for was what's his name? I liked Zabit uh Nurmagomedov Sharipov. I don't know.
Magomed Sharipov.
Magomed Sharipov, yeah. Dude, that guy, he was basically to me, he felt like a featherweight John Jones. Very similar in style, very creative, clean, and untouchable. Very, you couldn't touch him. And I like this style a lot. Too bad he hung up the gloves a while ago, but one of the guys that I really, really admired for the short run that he had.
When you are after the fight and you have some more time to spend, what do you like to do then? Do you have any like passion or hobbies outside of MMA?
Yes, of course. I will have to say my main obsession is MMA. If I'm not talking about it, I'm watching MMA. Um, Basically, my girlfriend became quite the connoisseur of MMA herself, just hanging out with me. You know, my friends all love MMA, but outside of MMA, I got three dogs. I like to take for walks, and I like to get work around the house done whilst ignoring my girlfriend, who's got a ton of questions. You know, you know what it is like. You know, when you're a guy, you want to get work around the house done, and you want to be in that zone. You just don't want to talk to anyone. You want to get stuff done. That's how we do it. You know, I got to be in the zone. So that's as you can see, I got the tape. I'm painting the trims of the doors today. Yeah, that's just good on me. Other than that, what else? What other hobbies do I need? I don't have any other hobbies. I don't like going to clubs and drinking a bunch of alcohol or doing a bunch of cocaine like John Jones. Maybe I should. Maybe that's the secret. But I'm it's a pretty humble life. I just live in my house, gym, or I'm at the dog park. And I guess it's not the most exciting story to tell, but it is my story.
Probably it's good not to have many distractions, just to be in the game like for the most of the time.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I um I do like I'm going home to the Netherlands for 3 weeks after my fight. So I don't plan on training. I plan on eating a lot of food and having a good time.
And I have one last question. It's outside of of the fighting of MMA.
Yeah.
What three words would you have to have? Would you like to have on your gravestone? It can be three words. It can be five. Like what kind of motto would you have on your grave?
Kicked fucking ass.
Definitely easy to remember.
Yeah. I don't know, dude. I'll I'll leave that up to the ones burying me when the time is right.
Okay, Victor. So many thanks for the conversation. I'm really looking forward to this fight because I think that it will be a good clash of the styles, and especially because if it is a welterweight division, it should be a very good fight. And I hope that we can talk after the bout one more time.
Yes, of course, bro. Thank you for having me. Sorry for not responding that much. I haven't been on my Instagram. I've been training, but I would love to have you to have another chat after my fight.